Mahmood, who would like to be a Labour Cabinet Minister, has said repeatedly that you will support self-determination in Kashmir. Now this terrifies us, because this is a green signal for more terrorism to make it happen. A. Secondly, the Labour Party imposed a 3-line whip in 2010 to demonize all us Hindus, in effect, as racists. It is the Labour Party which has acted. Now I'm speaking today on behalf of 30 organizations, 600,000 people, and we will collectively vote against every Labour Party member and lead them to vote. So I'm asking you, are you repeating what Ed Miliband and Shabana Mahmood? I have an email from Ed Miliband saying he supports basically self-determination. This is not going to wash. People are very, very upset, and we are organized to fight this bitterly.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that you know the Conservative view, as you just said, but just to clarify, Kashmir is, of course, a long and outstanding issue, but I believe it's not for the UK to prescribe a solution or mediate in finding one. I believe it is for India and Pakistan to find a lasting solution.
I have a huge respect for Mr Modi, but I don't think Mr Modi should come and sort out Harrow's problems, and as a result I don't think Britain should be trying to sort out Kashmir's, the Kashmir issue. That's for India and Pakistan to sort out. If there's a negotiation to be had, it's up to them. It's not for Britain to get involved at all. I do think we have a responsibility to work with India. I've always thought that India should take its, what I think is its rightful seat at the top table internationally and join the UN Security Council. And I can't understand why that hasn't been pushed as hard under the last government as it was when we were last in government under Gordon Brown and Tony Blair.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you. The UK cannot dictate to anybody how to solve such a long-standing issue. But there are things in the UK where it can help. Please, Kashmir, come and learn from what has happened in Northern Ireland. There are things it will show that solutions are possible slowly through the listening. And if there's anything in the UK, or visiting Harrow, if there's anything in the UK can help people, then we should be doing so. But we should not be dictating this way or that way.
Thank you.
It's our job to listen.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you for the question. I think Kashmir is a long-standing problem and one that seems almost incapable of resolution. But if it is to be resolved, it must be resolved by the Indian people and government and the Pakistani people and government, and they must work out the solution. If they want our help, then we must give it. But if they don't, then that's a matter for them.
Thank you. Bob.
I won't give you the party position, I'll give you my position. Jammu and Kashmir are part of India they remain. The Pakistani forces that illegally occupy part of Kashmir should leave. Pakistan should stop sponsoring state-sponsored terrorism into Kashmir, and more importantly, above all else, the Kashmir Pandits who were forced to leave 25 years ago should be allowed to return to their homes they occupied for thousands of years.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. TUS's position is we prefer solidarity to war. We believe in empowering all people. So we would support the legitimate right of people to decide what happens in their country, in their region. Okay. Britain ought to remember, of course, its responsibility as the former colonial power. Yeah. So it does need to take responsibility for the mess that's been left behind. However, as others have said, actually, the solution will come from the people there, but they will have our support for what is their right to have self-determination.
Thank you, Nana. Umar.
Thank you. Well, I echo Gareth's comments, but also want to say that these problems should be resolved bilaterally between India and Pakistan, and it isn't Britain's place to interfere. But as we've heard, Britain does have a powerful place in the world and as such should be using its voice. Also, the plight of the Kashmiri pundits is something that we care deeply about, and if elected, I am happy to meet with the various groups that I know have been doing work here and speaking to various groups, and I will be willing to listen and hear what you'd like to see us do as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we've previously heard, it's not Britain's place to say what the solution is, but we are intrinsically tied with Kashmir. We were part of the creation of Kashmir. We need to be part of its solution, even though that's not dictating the solution is. And I think our place is to support the UN-led process whereby Kashmir and Kashmiri people decide who Kashmir belongs to.
Kashmir belongs to India.
Wally.
As someone who comes from a country that's been riven by division and question of religion and ethnicity for quite a number of hundreds of years, let me say my understanding and my advice, and it's always been the position of anybody who's a socialist, is that there can never be peace without for as long as there is injustice. But that we do believe that it's up to the mass of the people to resolve the issues. I don't think in any way, shape or form that we could have, in Ireland, have just trusted politicians in Britain, north or south. If only peace will come when ordinary people resolve their differences and work together to build a just and fair society.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank you.
Can I just make a quick request here? Is there something I want to ask?
Okay, back to local politics. I'm a resident of Harrow East, and I've just heard earlier on the introductions, and I want to specifically ask a question to both Labour and the Conservative candidate for Harrow East. What's going to be really important is that you've achieved something, you've done something with your life, and you can deliver something for the Hindus in this community, but also a track record. Bob, thank you for your comments. You've got a track record in industry, you've got a track record for delivering for the Hindus here. I heard nothing from the Labour candidate. What is actually what you've achieved in your life thus far that you can deliver for us here? Because so far from literature you've given, you just live here, but so there's lots of other people. So I'd like to know exactly what you will do, and also, if pardon my pun, there was a bit of a fudge in your last answer. So I'd like to ask
Could you please allow her to respond? I think the Labour candidate would be...
I think that might have been directed at me. So why don't I take your question first? The Labour Party certainly hasn't demonised Hindus. If you're referring to the caste discrimination legislation, that went through under a Conservative government. The people you need to ask why it went through. Hang on, sir.
Please wait.
You may not like the answer I'm going to give you. In fact, you probably won't like it. But if I listen to your question, perhaps you'd have the grace to listen to my answer.
Please.
Nothing went through the House of Commons in the last 5 years that didn't have the support of David Cameron and Nick Clegg. So don't demonise the Labour Party for what went through. You need to make clear where the responsibility lies. And if you don't like the legislation, you need to point the finger at the Conservative Party. As for the position that Shabana Mahmood has taken, there are many times in any political party when individuals hold different views. The views that I've expressed are the views of the Labour Party. And I come back to this central point. There are human rights issues in Kashmir for Kashmiri Hindus, and they have to be respected. I've been to Kashmir as chair of Labour Friends of India, sat down with some of the most senior people in India's military and discussed the challenge that they continue to face in terms of terrorists coming over the border from Pakistan. And I have absolutely no truck with that sort of terrorist activity. Britain should stand with any country that is facing that sort of terrorist activity. We did under the last Labour government, and we certainly will do under the coming Labour government.
Thank you. Anybody else want to respond to this? Umar Kumara from the Labour Party.
Thank you for your question. I'm not able to reel off 20 years of this and 30 years of that, because as you can tell, I haven't lived as long as some of the people who are up here on the stage. But that certainly doesn't mean that my life experiences are any less valid or what I want to do to Harrow is any less important. I've worked for the NHS, I've looked after 66 trusts around England, recruiting doctors and nurses and making sure that every hospital in these 66 trusts is fully staffed with nurses at all times. After that, I worked in the last Labour government. I've worked for an MP and for a minister, and then I've also worked in local government. And under the council that I worked for, we became the most flagship council in the country, delivered a living wage for over 5,000 staff, built 2,000 affordable homes, and also reintroduced EMA to thousands of underprivileged children. This is my track record in my job. I am still a young person and I think I've got a lot to give here in Harrow. Yes, I've lived in Harrow. I'm very proud of having lived in Harrow. I mentioned that I volunteer in Norfolk Park. I'm a radio presenter at our hospital. That's the hospital that saved my dad's life. And since I started working for the NHS, I've rounded my journey by carrying on giving back to our NHS. I've also written for the biggest Tamil newspaper in the world. For 7 years I was their young persons and English editorial writer, and I have a record in doing that. There are a number of things I've done outside of this as well in my personal life. I pursue other interests, whether that be through hobbies or sports, and I think I've got a lot to give to the borough. So certainly I've not lived as long as some of the people here, but that does not mean I will not be fighting for Harrow as hard as the people here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Is it the job of a government to provide education or provide a faith-based education? And how does that fit in with the bigger picture of integration?
Okay. Can we just pass the mic to each of the candidates here?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Regarding regeneration, but of course that requires people. Can I ask Harrow, what do you think is the optimum level of population that should be high?
That's a good one. Who wants to kick off with that?
Is preserve the quality of life for the people that live in Harrow. And that means ensuring that not only are there first-rate transport facilities, first-rate housing conditions, but we've got decent educational facilities, decent health facilities, decent shops, decent opportunities for leisure, and that we shouldn't suddenly be faced with charges to park in the car park at Harrow Leisure Centre because Harrow Council wants to grab more money off the people that go there. The reality is that what we have to do is plan and have a proper plan for the restructuring of Harrow. And my fear, I'll share with you, is that what the council has at the moment is a series of proposed developments that will spring up, and the developers will say, well, that's what we're doing, and then we'll be stuck with all the people that come to live there. And then when they say, well, where's the places for our children to go to school in? There won't be places. When they get ill, there won't be places in the hospitals. And that is the problem we face. That all of these developments need a proper plan for the whole of Harrow.
Thank you all. Anybody else wants to respond to that? Nana?
The interesting thing is, having talked to a colleague who has lived here all his life when I was on Harrow Council, he actually told me that, did I know that Harrow used to have more people living in it than it has now? So in the 50s, the population was greater. I think the challenge for most Harrovians right now is people like me, our children can't afford to live here. So what we do need is affordable housing so that we can preserve communities. Older people need their families to look after them. But if our families move to Milton Keynes and Luton and whatnot, who will look after families and how will our communities stay together? So for me, that is what we need to look at. Sustainable communities where we value our businesses and we don't put them out of business by stupid planning decisions.
Thank you. Gareth wants to respond here.
I can't beat Nana for maturity. I can't remember what it was like in Harrow in the 1950s. But I do share the view that says that actually it's not about what is the target number of people living in an area. We do need to make sure that if we're going to have developments, that those developments are integrated into a proper thought-through plan, a plan that's been consulted on, and all the implications of those developments are being thought through both for health services, both for schools, but also for leisure facilities and for other aspects of our quality of life. So I'm delighted that one of the things the council has done well, I think, is to create a new park in the Lowlands, near what was the Lowlands College where I went. It's now Harrow College. There's a new park being created there. You have to think about the green open spaces and where people are going to be able to relax and make sure that we protect the green lungs that we do have in Harrow, as well as thinking through where we can develop. I think one of the big developments that we need to see progress on is the Kodak site, and we need to make sure on that Kodak site that there is a mix of housing, affordable housing, genuinely affordable housing that people who are living in Harrow can afford to buy as well, housing that first-time buyers can genuinely afford to get as well. And that's why we need a strong target from the Mayor of London on how much affordable housing there should be.
Thanks, Gareth. Anybody else wants to respond on this one? Yes, please.
If I may, I'm going to go to my customer database because I've worked for a number of people who are developers. And the question that always needs to be asked is, what is the motive? The job that was least pleasant was because the guy wanted to get the house done up and make his million on it. The job that was the most valuable was one we did up in Harrow Weald on the high road. A solicitor and retiring, it was his offices above a shop. By the end of the job, we had made that into a family home. His motivation was good. Put it back to being a home because it had been in the 50s and bring benefit. Are these homes being built so someone can make a quick profit and throw in some token housing, or is the motive to build houses and homes of which we can be proud? Built to a good standard, built to a standard of high efficiency so they don't cost people an arm and a leg to heat.
Thank you. Chris has in hand.
I don't think you can prescribe an optimum for population, but I'm aware that there are certain constraints. I know that my own ward, the electorate has risen by 800 either in the past 4 years or the past 8, I forget which. But I do know that one of the things you can do is that you should look at the options before you, and you can create new homes by building on brownfield sites. But I don't think, the other thing, you don't think that you should touch the greenfield sites that do exist, which I'm sure a lot of developers would like to tear up. I don't think that they should be allowed to do so.
Thank you. I'm going to avoid actually repeating what has been said all the way along this line, because I actually agree with a lot of the points that have been made by all of the candidates. I think we do need a plan for the whole of Harrow. I think that development in Harrow has been extremely sporadic. Certainly from my professional experience, I know that, and you can actually see it as you drive through Harrow. We do need, when you plan for an area, you need a plan across sectors. So you need to consider the health, the implications on the health service, on the schools, on the transport, the infrastructure, the shops, the businesses, the homes. And it's very important that we have what's called a spatial plan, a plan across those sectors. And another thing that we, of course, must ensure in Harrow, as we must ensure everywhere else, is that we have robust planning rules that are enforced when they are broken. And I feel extremely strongly about that. If we want continuity and we want a well-built-up area, we need people to respect our planning rules, and they need to be enforced against if they are broken. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Omar wanted to respond very quickly.
Thank you. Again, not to repeat, but I don't think optimum level, you can't just pluck a number out of the air. But there is a serious question about the long-term future of Harrow. We're all here because we live in Harrow and we care about where the future of our borough is going. So when we talk about services, we can't hear, we've heard it today about a number of things going on with the council. Actually, when £83 million has been cut from a budget there's only so much they can deliver. We've had on pressures on our health services. If you close 2 nearby A&Es, what will happen is that your existing A&E has the longest A&E waiting times in the country. If you're not putting more school places where we need it, like boroughs like ours in Harrow, you will have the most overcrowded primary schools in the country. So there's a lot of rhetoric, but actually you need to look at who's going to deliver on this and who's going to stand by what they've pledged. And Harrow has been let down at the moment. We do need a long-term sustainable solution for what's going on in Harrow, for the future of the young people here, and for those of us who plan to live here long into retirement. So it's a very, very important question that you raised, and I'm glad that we've got consensus on some of this.
Hannah wants to come back to what Umos just said.
Sorry, can I make a comment back?
Yes, you can. Yes, what does Jen want to say
Sorry,
again?
the reason I specifically asked that one is because of what you've said, is the people in power, I live actually on the other side of the border, and they know better, i.e. brains. Because they haven't got a clue. No one knows what the optimum amount is going to be, what they can juggle with. And what happens is, as I was coming down the road today, people just, blaring horns at each other. People can't stand each other.
All right, I just have to stop you there. Hannah wanted to respond, and then has anybody else got anything more to say about this? This gentleman there, please.
I certainly intend to have conversations with any business that thinks it's going to be badly affected by any of the regeneration plans in Harrow. We need to be encouraging businesses to benefit from regeneration plans in Harrow. We certainly need to use the finance that housing developers will potentially bring to regenerate Harrow, because under the Conservative plans means there's going to be so much cut from local councils. It is the money of developers that we're going to have to try and direct in the best possible way to get not only more houses, but also a revitalised town centre and hopefully a revitalised Worcester. But certainly, if we want businesses to succeed, and if we want succeeding businesses to continue to succeed, then absolutely, as an MP post this election, I'll certainly talk to you and your dad going forward, and hopefully one or two other businesses as well, sir.
Hannah wants to respond as well.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you for asking a question on planning. As I said in my introduction, I'm actually a planning lawyer by profession. I also chaired a borough planning committee for 6 years. So planning is something that's very close to my heart, which is one of my priorities, as I also said, was regeneration. Regeneration should be the benefit for an area, that's why you want to regenerate an area. If there are issues in the consultation, then that needs to be dealt with. That needs to be dealt with through the planning process, and it needs to be taken to task. So there is certainly an issue of consultation. That's something that I would be happy to deal with, because, as I say, developers should be consulting on plans, planning going forward should always be a positive process. It is a controversial process, but it should always be positive, and the best way to get planning to be positive is to have the buy-in from everybody where possible.
Thank you. The gentleman there said his hand for some time. I can't see. Is anybody else responding? Yes, I'm sorry.
Always the question is, where's the money coming from? Would it be a net gain or is it lost to the borough? Is it suitable? Is it making it very hard to get great transport in the borough? Our particular concern as the Green Party is looking at reuse of buildings, brownfield sites. I had a little hand in a bit of regeneration of the High Road during the last election. What was this is obviously we managed to bring that back into being a family home. I had a little hand in regenerating a building in Bermondsey from redundant offices into a place of worship and residential accommodation, particularly people who are overlooked by the statutory means, the young and the single working people. So I declare an interest in that. I'm elected as the MP. I do the MP's job. I listen to the concerns people bring. I'll use the informal consultations, maybe the more formal ones, to put forward what people have brought to my doors. Once you're an MP, there's a long line outside the door and a lot of hard work has to be done.
Thank you.
Answer to your question, I would certainly consult on all aspects which might affect businesses
before the planning process began. So I would certainly, if elected, await your call and would discuss matters with you before we put forward to the formal planning process.
In my experience with Harrow Council, they don't run consultations, they run notifications. This is what we're going to do, whether you like it or not. My view certainly is that all businesses should be consulted. We do need more housing, you're quite right, but we also have to bear in mind, we don't want tower blocks that are soulless and destroy the landscape. We should consider car parking facilities to be available for the housing. We should consider the educational facilities for the children that will live there, the health facilities for the people that will live there, and all of the services, not just providing housing for housing's sake.
I think it's also important that we don't do things that destroy businesses. We've been blessed by these beautiful premises. And for me, if we are going to, you're right, Harrow doesn't consult, they notify. that is what we get most of the time. But what would be good is, if we come up with creative solutions. Yes, we need housing, but we also need car parking for the people who use these premises. As most of the ladies here will agree, you don't wear high heels and then go and get the bus. You'd like to come in a taxi or in a car, and then they can park. So if you close a car park, how will we use these premises? So I think it's very, very important that we think of that.
Thank you.
Certainly you need to consult with local businesses and also nearby residents to see how they feel about new housing being opened up. We've heard about pressures on local amenities. Again, that needs to be looked at. So whether in our school places, can the GP cope, can the nearby amenities cope with extra people coming in? But what we also need to think about is if the housing being built is genuinely affordable. Now, first time buyer, the average age in London is 37. Here in Harrow, too many young people and young families trying to get on and move to a bigger property to facilitate their new needs are really, really struggling. So we need to have that serious conversation about genuinely affordable houses being built. Because I think we'd all agree we do need more houses, but there are a wealth of things that need to be looked at around that. So if I'm elected, I will be sitting down with businesses, local residents and the council and seeing how we can work together going forward to build more genuinely affordable homes that Harrow desperately needs.
Thank you.
This is not going to be too revolutionary or unique, but I think we all know that in an area, in a community like Harrow, we don't want to become just another big housing block, and if you want to do anything other than live in a house, you have to take a train into London. We need to be our own local community with our own local amenities and a council with a business plan that acknowledges that people want to live, work and enjoy Harrow. And as long as we make a clear business plan on that and stick to it, we can keep this community alive, and that business plan will include talking to local businesses and making sure the lifeblood of our local economy are kept in the loop.
Thank you.
As a former chair of the planning committee in Rice Northwood area, one of the things that we tried to impress upon all our council officers in the planning department was don't tell people what they can't have, tell them what they can have, and discuss with people. When we're involved in a major regeneration, particularly in relation to housing, in relation to affordable housing, I think it's important to make the point, we believe in the provision of council homes, really affordable council homes. Sadly, the Mayor of London, his definition of affordability is £2,400 per month. That's his definition of affordable housing. I deal with many people who are living in the most appalling housing conditions, and it needs to change. But we need to build communities, not just estates.
Thank you. Question for a gentleman there who's been waiting for an awful long time.
It's okay, Madam Chairman.
I was told at the age of 12 that I had a vocation, and I was sent away to be a monk for 3.5 years. I'm subsequently an atheist, although 2 of my brothers are priests. My father was a student priest prior to his getting married. I don't have anything other than respect for religious beliefs. However, I do not particularly agree with exclusive faith schools. And the reason being, as I've seen what's happened for many generations in the north of Ireland, where Catholic kids went to Catholic schools, Protestant kids went to Protestant schools, nobody mixed. And they ended up in the most appalling sectarian kind of hatred. And when you consider over that 30-year period, the 3,000 dead were equated to 300,000 here. So I believe that schools should be funded by the government, but they should be open to all. Those who want to pursue their faith should do so at home or in their relationship.
Can I please request each one of the candidates to keep their answers very short in view of the time?
Okay, my view on faith-based schools is that as long as we have Ofsted ensuring that faith-based teaching is not coming at the cost of embracing diversity in diverse communities, it is up to the parents to decide if they want their child to go to a school with a religious ethos that reflects their family and their home lives. And I will always support the parents' right to choose the standard and style of schooling that their children receive.
Thank you very much. Emma?
Well, I went to a faith school here in Harrow, and I'm very proud that I was able to receive a brilliant standard of education there. Faith schools have an important role to play in our society and also here in Harrow. I support the creation of new faith schools here. I've met with a number of our existing schools and also people that want to open new faith schools, and I've pledged my wholehearted support for that. What I have said to all of these faith schools that Harrow is a beautifully diverse borough, and that I'd encourage all of these schools to encourage integration and also accept students from other faiths, which all of these schools have pledged to. So I'm proud that Harrow has that record, and I'll continue supporting new faith schools here in Harrow.
Thank you very much. Nana?
As a mother, I wanted faith education for my children. Because although I'm a Protestant, I had Catholic education for part of my life, and I thought it was valuable. What I've noticed in Harrow is that all faith schools do take people from other faiths. So St. Dominic's does take people from other faiths. I welcome the fact that we have other faiths now having schools, and I look forward to seeing them also welcoming people of other faiths. And I think that is the strength of Harrow. We are one of the most religiously diverse boroughs, and we do value faith.
Thank you very much. Bob?
I think it's the fundamental right of all parents to choose the choice of education for their children that they want. If they want a faith-based education for their children, they should have it. Whether they're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, whatever, as long as the demand is there, and as long as their support is there, I support it. And I'm very proud that we have the first Hindu state-sponsored primary school in the country, in Harrow East, and I've been assisting and helping the creation of the first state-sponsored Hindu secondary school in Harrow East, because I believe passionately that the choice should be there. And if I'm re-elected, we're going to make that dream a reality very quickly.
Thank you very much.
Where there is the demand, then there should be faith schools if the communities want it. And I certainly went to Krishna Evangelist School when it opened. I've seen it, and I think it's part of the rich fabric of Harrow's life.
Thank you.
I've been educated in state primary schools, a church primary school and a secondary school that was independent but had a certain ethos. Now, regarding a school that's within a faith community, can it be a source of pride? Can it be a source of pride given that people are coming out well educated, the talents and the abilities brought out? As a political party, our duty will be to ensure that all schools can do that. In the state sector, through being properly funded, the services, the support, the supervision through the inspection regime of schools, all schools to be under that, so that a school, whether it's a state school or a religious school, has the benefit of supervision, the support, so that it can achieve the highest standards and something that a faith can be proud of. And if somebody wishes to misuse education to foment division, shame on them.
Thank you, Ron. Garrett?
Well, I think all the parties are broadly in the same place on faith schools. Where there is a big divide is over the question on the funding of education. And if you vote Conservative, you'll get a 10% cut to school budgets in real terms over the next 5 years. If you vote Labour, we're going to cap class sizes for 5, 6 and 7-year-olds to just 30 pupils in a class. That won't happen if you vote Conservative. If you vote Conservative or Liberal Democrat, you're going to continue to get tuition fees of at least £9,000, and neither of the Conservatives or the Liberal Democrats have said they wouldn't increase tuition fees beyond £9,000. If you vote Labour, tuition fees will come down.
Thank you. Anna?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay,
Can we have some quiet, please?
I support people who want to work hard, get on and provide a decent education for their children, and people should have a choice in relation to their schools. As I said in my introduction, I have 3 children. All 3 children went to a faith school, and I believe that they have the respect, the understanding and the tolerance that all faiths teach and that I would expect from everyone. I'm proud that Harrow is the first state-funded free school, the Avanti House that's been referred to, and I'm proud to previously have worked on a governing body for a Jewish free school in Hartsmere, and I'm delighted to have recently joined the board for a new Tamil free school in Rayners Lane. I'm proud of this party's commitment to back free schools at the rate that we have, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you very much. Right, I hope you're all satisfied with that.
Okay, back to local politics. I'm a resident of Harrow East, and I've just heard earlier on the introductions, and I want to basically ask a question to both Labour and the Conservative candidate for Harrow East. What's going to be really important is that you've achieved something, you've done something with your life, and you can deliver something for the Hindus in this community, but also a track record. Bob, thank you for your comment. You've got a track record in industry, you've got a track record for delivering for the Hindus here. I heard nothing from the Labour candidate. What is actually what you've achieved in your life thus far that you can deliver for us here? Because so far from literature you've given, you just live here, but so does lots of other people. So I'd like to know exactly what you will do, and also, if pardon my pun, there was a bit of a fudge in your last answer. So I'd like to ask
Could you please allow her to respond? Uma Kumara from the Labour Party.
Thank you for your question. I'm not able to reel off 20 years of this and 30 years of that, because as you can tell, I haven't lived as long as some of the people who are up here on the stage. But that certainly doesn't mean that my life experiences are any less valid or what I want to do to Harrow is any less important. I've worked for the NHS, I've looked after 66 trusts around England, recruiting doctors and nurses and making sure that every hospital in these 66 trusts is fully staffed with nurses at all times. After that, I worked in the last Labour government. I've worked for an MP and for a minister, and then I've also worked in local government. And under the council that I worked for, we became the most flagship council in the country, delivered a living wage for over 5,000 staff, built 2,000 affordable homes, and also reintroduced EMA to thousands of underprivileged children. This is my track record in my job. I am still a young person, and I think I've got a lot to give here in Harrow. Yes, I've lived in Harrow. I'm very proud of having lived in Harrow. I mentioned that I volunteer in Norfolk Pub. I'm a radio presenter at our hospital. That's the hospital that saved my dad's life. And since I started working for the NHS, I've rounded my journey by carrying on giving back to our NHS. I've also written for the biggest Tamil newspaper in the world. For 7 years, I was their young persons and English editorial writer, and I have a record in doing that. There are a number of things I've done outside of this as well. My personal life, I pursue other interests, whether that be through hobbies or sports, and I think I've got a lot to give to the borough. So certainly, I've not lived as long as some of the people here, but that does not mean I will not be fighting for Harrow as hard as the people here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uma Kumara from the Labour Party.
Thank you for your question. I'm not able to reel off 20 years of this and 30 years of that, because as you can tell, I haven't lived as long as some of the people who are up here on the stage. But that certainly doesn't mean that my life experiences are any less valid or what I want to do to Harrow is any less important. I've worked for the NHS, I've looked after 66 trusts around England, recruiting doctors and nurses and making sure that every hospital in these 66 trusts is fully staffed with nurses at all times. After that, I worked in the last Labour government. I've worked for an MP and for a minister, and then I've also worked in local government. And under the council that I worked for, we became the most flagship council in the country, delivered a living wage for over 5,000 staff, built 2,000 affordable homes, and also reintroduced EMA to thousands of underprivileged children. This is my track record in my job. I am still a young person and I think I've got a lot to give here in Harrow. Yes, I've lived in Harrow. I'm very proud of having lived in Harrow. I mentioned that I volunteer in Norfolk Park. I'm a radio presenter at our hospital. That's the hospital that saved my dad's life. And since I started working for the NHS, I've rounded my journey by carrying on giving back to our NHS. I've also written for the biggest Tamil newspaper in the world. For 7 years I was their young persons and English editorial writer, and I have a record in doing that. There are a number of things I've done outside of this as well, my personal life. I pursue other interests, whether that be through hobbies or sports, and I think I've got a lot to give to the borough. So certainly I've not lived as long as some of the people here, but that does not mean I will not be fighting for Harrow as hard as the people here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Is it the job of a government to provide education or provide a faith-based education? And how does that fit in with the bigger picture of integration?
Okay. Could we just pass the mic to each of the candidates here?
Okay, back to local politics. I'm a resident of Harrow East, and I've just heard earlier on the introductions, and I want to basically ask a question to both Labour and the Conservative candidate for Harrow East. What's going to be really important is that you've achieved something, you've done something with your life, and you can deliver something for the Hindus in this community, but also a track record. Bob, thank you for your comment. You've got a track record in industry, you've got a track record for delivering for the Hindus here. I heard nothing from the Labour candidate. What is actually what you've achieved in your life thus far that you can deliver for us here? Because so far from literature you've given, you just live here, but so there's lots of other people. So I'd like to know exactly what you will do, and also, if there was a bit of a fudge in the last answer. So I'd like to
Could you please allow her to respond?